Welcome to another exciting edition of Plank of the Week. It is, of course, talkTV's big show, and we've got plenty of planks to go at today. And I'm delighted to say Kevin O'Sullivan joins us. He's, of course, doing Drive this week. He's also got his own show at the weekend, one with me, one without me. Emma Webb is here. She doesn't have her own show at the weekends, but, you know, we'd like her to. But any time you think of a plank, you let us know, and we will get straight to it. Let's kick things off with Kevin. Kevin, who's your first plank of the week?
Mark Drakeford, the
Drakeford.
Welsh leader, always a favourite.
Yes.
He's come up with a scheme whereby basically he's going to take all of the Welsh people's tax money and he's going to give it to teenagers. He's going to give them all £1,700 a month, £1,700 free money.
Why?
Well, it's supposed to encourage them to become
Robin Hood.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't in any way want to besmirch the characters of young teenagers, but a good way of Mark Drakeford to distribute this money, cut out the middleman and just give it to drugs dealers.
Straight away.
I mean, they don't have to have a job. It's just free money.
Is this coming just from the Welsh people?
It's a Mark Drakeford.
Well, except the money that he gets comes from central government, doesn't it? He doesn't get money.
So this is public money from the rest of the country.
This is our money. Particularly Welsh people's money, but the whole, as Mike says, the whole country.
But why is he giving them money?
Because it's supposed to, because they can't get jobs, and this will encourage them to become. That will encourage them to become responsible citizens. It will give them a start in life.
It might actually encourage them to become drug dealers. Well, they might use the 1,700 quid to go and buy some drugs, and then sell them for more money.
Again, you can't say that this about every kid, you know, every 18-year-old. But, you know, we all know what we're thinking here. Give a kid £1,700 a month. What is he or she going to spend it on? What are they going to do with that? I know, they'll go to the pub, they'll go to their dealer, they'll get stoned, they'll get drunk. It's
they
ridiculous.
might invest it in Bitcoin.
Yeah. Even more irresponsible.
Yeah, you lose it even quicker. But it is mad, isn't it? Has he put a ceiling figure on how much this is going to actually cost them all?
I'm not sure what the actual cost of it all, but it's going to be pretty enormous. But as I say, £1,700 per kid. I mean, I keep calling them kids. I mean, these are people... young people who are embarking on life's rocky highway, and this will not help. It'll give them a sense.
There is a sense now, though, isn't there, that the government is here to give you money.
Yeah,
and
that's right. You're right.
It's been created.
It's the furlough.
Oh, you're having a bit of trouble finding a job. Have some free money.
It's very convenient, though, right? Because they are creating dependency, and so they're creating the dependency of their own voter base. It's basically bribing young people to vote
for me, and I'll give you free money. Exactly. It is not a responsible thing to do, and it is buying votes, and it is taking our money and giving it to kids.
Have they done what they did in Scotland, which was to lower the voting age as well? Because if you get to vote at 16, you'll go, oh, definitely voting for 1,700 quid.
Well, it'll definitely be in his agenda. I mean, that's what Blair always wanted to do. That's what Labour want to do. The lower you go down the age ladder in terms of voting, the more likely they're...
If he had any sense, he'd offer them half up front.
Yeah.
And then half once they've voted him back in again.
Once you get me in, I'll bung you the rest.
And
Absolutely ridiculous.
The other story I saw about Drakeford was that he's planning on banning teenagers from drinking coffee and tea because he thinks it's bad for the obesity figures.
I still really don't understand
the shark,
this.
isn't he?
Well,
because coffee, particularly, if you just have a black Americano, it's one of the most low-calorie things. But is it tea or coffee, or is he trying to ban them from being able to access Starbucks?
Well, I think that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to stop them from going into these very highly priced, expensive coffee outlets where you get an awful lot of creamy, high-calorie stuff. It's obviously just a war on the coffee shops, isn't it?
He's trying to stop our teenagers getting their chamomile tea.
Well, Drakeford is the kind of politician who thinks that it is his job to stick his fingers into every aspect of everyone's life. You know, it's none of his business whether or not teenagers go and drink tea or coffee. But him being a sort of lunatic Labour First Minister thinks this is his job, you know, oh, you can't eat that, you can't drink that. Go away, you fascist. Leave us alone.
Yeah, leave us alone. And leave our money alone while you're at it. Emma, what's your first one?
My first nomination is the Glastonbury goers.
Oh, yes.
Who listened to that speech by Greta Thunberg about how important climate change is and how important it is to be responsible with respect to our environment, and then trashed the place.
Yeah, of course.
Left it completely covered with litter, and it costs them an extraordinary extraordinary amount of money to clear up every year after Glastonbury, but just the photographs of the piles of rubbish and tents and all sorts left behind. Really climate and environment conscious
it's an ecological disaster. I mean, this is a dairy farm-worthy farm the rest of the year, or the rest of when Glastonbury isn't on.
Not very vegan.
Not doing any harm to the environment at all. And then once a year, along comes this catastrophe that they pretend is green and, remember the word, recyclable.
Yes.
All rubbish is recyclable. Whether you can do it environmentally is another question.
Well, apparently every couple of years they don't have the festival because they have to let the Lyland fallow because it's
every 2 years.
trash.
Ruined. And also, I mean, what do they think powers all the lights? What do they think powers all the electric guitars and the, you know, electric drums? And
how does Greta think they all got there?
And most
on
of them
foot,
couldn't
by
go.
boat?
Well, most of them didn't go on a train because there was a train strike on Thursday. So most of them either went on a train early, which is not completely, you know, green travel anyway, and loads of them would have driven.
No, the traffic jams around Glastonbury are legendary. I mean, so it does amount to, you know, what Glastonbury is literally rubbish. I mean, it's literally rubbish. And I tweeted before, when it was announced the other day that Greta Thunberg would be appearing on the Pyramid stage at 5:15, I tweeted, anyone know what she'll be talking about? I mean, she's a bit of a monolith, isn't she?
She really is. The time is now, apparently, because it was then, but now it's now, because it didn't happen then. Presumably in the future, the time will also be now.
She's like one of those medieval apocalyptic saints. The end is always nigh.
The end is always nigh.
She had a huge cross on her shoulder, dragging it around.
The other great thing about Glastonbury this time around was apparently they had loads of electric vehicles to sort of ferry rock stars
pretending that they're being
But guess
green.
what? They had to charge them with diesel-powered generators. So
that's what I don't like about it.
The thing.
It's the hypocrisy. They say, oh, we're now very green, we're very environmental. No, you're not. You are an environmental catastrophe every 2 years. Be honest about it.
It's the same, though, with the hypocrisy over zero emissions vehicles. They're only zero emissions after the point at which they're made. Those lithium batteries that cost as an awful amount of carbon that goes into making these things. They're not good for the environment at all, and you can't recycle
And actually,
them.
you're not completely correct to say that, because once they're driven on the road, they still give off emissions from the tyres, they give off emissions from all sorts of...
And the energy's got to be generated from somewhere.
And exactly right. And most of the electricity that's going into the car will have been generated by a means other than a green means, probably, you know. I actually lifted one of those electric bikes the other day because some bozo parked it in my car parking space, and I was thinking about throwing it into the river. But it was so heavy, I could barely lift it up off the ground.
But it goes to show just how much it is to do with, well, virtue signalling gets overused, but they want people to, you know, see them appearing as virtuous, and they want to feel good about themselves, and so
they lie.
So it's all about what people say now. It's not about what they do. So they're not going to think that they're hypocritical at all after listening to Greta do her speech and then leaving all of their trash everywhere. Because actually,
the whole thing about the green issue is it's just a pack of lies, you know, like COP26, which turned into sort of private jet central.
It's not the best way to look after the environment. Exactly. If you want to look after the environment, there are many ways to do it, but by being one of these eco-hypocrites is not the way.
By all means have this biannual fun
yeah.
event, but don't pretend it's ecological.
Don't pretend it's ecological. Well, the only thing they decided to do at COP26 was to have COP27, which will be even worse than Egypt.
All aboard the gravy train.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, speaking of soothsayers and you know, the End is Nigh Brigade, my nomination for the first plank for me is Natalie Don, who you probably haven't heard of, who's an MSP in the Scottish National Party, or the Scottish Nationalist Party, for Renfrewshire North and West. She's basically launched this week, just the end of last week, because I'm going to drag in part of last week, a consultation on witchcraft, and to right the historic wrongs of people who were convicted of witchcraft 300 years ago. Now, I know that Scottish independence has been sort of put on the back burner, but, I mean, I think surely there's better things to do in the Scottish Parliament, right? This follows a posthumous apology from Nicola Sturgeon on International Women's Day to those convicted under the Witchcraft Act of 1563. And do you know how many people were convicted in Scotland? It was something like almost 4,000 people were actually convicted of it, which is extraordinary. And how much money is going to be wasted, right? It was law until 1736, right? the historic wrong of witchcraft convictions. They want to give legal pardons to around 2,500 people.
Meanwhile, they're hunting the new witches in the form of TERFs.
Yes.
Exactly right.
Well, that's actually a very good point. They've actually created the new witch, haven't they?
Yeah, they had more civil liberties back in the witchcraft era in Scotland. Now that the Queen Nicola is in charge.
That's what they did with the new Scottish hate crime legislation. They got rid of the old blasphemy laws and then brought in ones that are more suited to the modern age that also try to control people's thought. And now they're going after women who disagree with the
and you know,
gender orthodoxy.
When you read something that's said by a politician, you realise how puffed up and pompous they have become. This is what Natalie Don said. We will be saying... That's ridiculous. We will be sending a strong message to the wide world that Scotland recognises what happened to these people as a deplorable miscarriage of justice.
I mean, I've had
you did convict them of witchcraft.
I've had those ladies who campaigned for this on my show a couple of times. They're very nice people, and I don't decry their cause per se, but I think if Nicola Sturgeon is watching, remember this, Nicola. So back in that era, 300 years ago, when your countrymen and women were busy executing people for being witches...
Burning people at the stake.
And burning people at the stakes. They were allowed to get round their own dinner tables and have conversations without fear of being arrested, which is more than you can say for your Scotland, right?
It's actually right. What's your second plank?
It is Tom Felton. He is an actor from Harry Potter, the latest of the cast to sort of abandon poor old J.K. Rowling for her view on trans issues. And he was at a kind of film press conference yesterday where he was asked a question about J.K. Rowling's views on trans issues and sat there completely silent. Sort of twiddling his thumbs, refusing to answer the question, while some PR flunky from the movie company shouted at the Sky reporter, "We're not talking about that, you can't talk about that, can't talk about that." What happened to free speech? Unbelievable.
Well, I mean, the
So
PRs
cowardly.
were always a bit like that, weren't they? You just told them to get lost, or in more colourful terms.
But, you know, Tom Felton should have answered the question, and all of them, Ratcliffe and all the others, should not be, Emma Watson, should not be abandoning the woman who made them rich and famous. That's J.K. Rowling.
I mean,
it's unbelievable.
Apart from anything else, it's incredibly bad manners.
It's just cowardly. If they've got an opinion on J.K. Rowling's views, they should state their opinion and they should do it respectfully whilst acknowledging the fact that their careers are dependent on her.
Yeah,
exactly
and that
right.
they owe her a lot, but they could still say their views, or even refuse to say their views, and to do it with a backbone rather than hand-wringing, being all...
Even better, why not give back all the money they've made from the Harry Potter franchise and actually take a proper stand and say, do you know what? I, because of my new views on trans matters, cannot, in all good conscience, take any money from this ghastly woman who's got such terrible views, which I don't agree with.
They should donate all the money to Stonewall.
Yeah,
and
and
that's what they believe in.
This is the most damning comment on the woke brigade. So you've got film studios, you've got actors, you've got directors, all making fortunes, billions out of the Harry Potter franchise. Someone says, blimey, we've got to cut J.K. Rowling out of the equation because she has controversial views on trans issues. Somebody else probably say, yeah, but she wrote the book, she created the whole thing. How are we going to do that? Don't worry, we can manage it. No problem. We can cut her out.
We can do
Unbelievable.
it. I know, it's
unbelievable.
Mad. Who's your second one, Emma?
Prince Charles.
Yes.
So Prince Charles has
I
been...
got a bag of money for you.
Prince Charles,
Charlie.
He's been up to a lot this week. One of them, as you've alluded to there, is receiving a suitcase with £1 million in it from a Qatari politician. Yeah. Apparently, this was all above board.
Of course it was.
If it was above board, I'm interested to know why it was delivered in a suitcase and not just done with a bank transfer. But he also came out saying that we need to... and the reason why I believe this is plankish is because bear in mind that it was all set up nicely from the Platinum Jubilee, that he's really the heir apparent now, he's getting very, very close to being on the throne, and the Platinum Jubilee really set him up as the person to take that baton and be a responsible monarch. And then he's come out and he's expressing his opinions about all sorts of things, which is completely inappropriate. One of them is taking a side in the very divisive debate about slavery and the teaching of slavery, saying that it should be taught in this country in the same way that the Holocaust is, that we should be teaching.
And he's quite happy to dismantle the Commonwealth from within, isn't he?
So it's not so much that whether or not he's right about his views and whether slavery should be taught or how it should be taught, but it's about the fact that he was set up with this, the Queen had done so well, and the planning of the Jubilee had done so well to set him up to take over and to be a responsible monarch, and everybody was feeling so hopeful. And then in the couple of weeks that follow, he just absolutely trashed it, repeatedly trashed it.
Absolutely incredible. Amazing. My second one is kind of a bit scattergun, really, because I couldn't decide whether it should be the RMT, who have been striking for the past week, or whether it should be the doctors who are threatening to strike for 30%, or the BA workers who are threatening to shut down Heathrow on the first weekend of the school holidays, or the posties who are also threatening to strike, or the teachers.
I mean, literally everybody out.
Literally
everybody out.
The barristers who are out, who have turned down a 15% pay rise. I think it's just all of them.
Barristers, go on strike, don't go on strike. Nobody cares.
Yeah, get yourself a decent lawyer. See how that goes. Oh, no, there aren't any. The world seems to have become consumed, or Britain certainly has become consumed with trade union power. And Mick Lynch is being hailed as this great character that's emerged as a tremendously brilliant working class man, which is in itself incredibly condescending. People who are coming, comes as a great shock to Guardian readers that people from working class homes can actually be quite clever. Oh, my God, what do you mean he didn't go to Oxbridge? How can he be clever? We don't know him. We've never met him before. He's come from nowhere. He used to just have an ordinary job. But the idea that they're all going to say that they need more money simply because of inflation, well, just get used to it. He didn't take any less money when it was at 1%.
The irony, of course, is that by doing this, they're damaging the economy and therefore making it worse for everyone across the board, including themselves. Right. And that if all of these people do get handed sudden pay rises, that will just aggregate inflation.
Yeah, and they're all on a bandwagon, and the doctor's demanding 30% or will walk out. I mean, old Hippocrates, all those years ago when he came up with the Hippocratic oath, do no harm, treat people for their medical problems, heal. He didn't put in, unless, of course, you've got an industrial dispute and you're going to go on strike.
Yes. Hippocrates spelt slightly differently.
With an I instead of an A. I mean, that's the thing. The guys in some parts of this country would tell you that, well, you wouldn't know if your GP was on strike because we haven't seen him for 2 years anyway.
Exactly.
Exactly. Nonsense.
So doctors can't go on strike.
They shouldn't.
It's also really unethical because they've got this huge backlog to deal with. They've taken the Hippocratic oath. Many doctors earn good salaries anyway. I'm sure that there are NHS staff
None of them are paupers, Emma.
The lawyers? I mean, there are lawyers who are striking. I'm sure not all of them are junior criminal barristers who, to be fair, don't earn very much. But everybody's coming out and demanding more money. Where's it going to come from? Do they not think... Are they so economically ignorant that they don't understand that this is going to make the situation worse?
Yeah, that's what I've said. I said to some barrister on Twitter, I said, what, so you're going on strike so you can maintain your 6- and 7-figure salaries? He said, some junior barristers only earn £20,000 a year. I said, well, the clue is in the word junior. Yeah. And frankly, £20,000 a year is OK, so I don't care.
Right. Also, nobody's forcing it to be barristers, are they?
There is a problem with particularly with criminal barristers, because actually they really do, basically, unless you're quite well off,
with legal aid.
You wouldn't, unless you were quite well off, you wouldn't be able to go into criminal law because it doesn't pay very well for a very long time, and unless you're a very senior criminal lawyer, which takes a long time to get there, then you'd have to have someone.
Maybe they should just get smarter and start representing the criminals, and then they'd actually, the good criminals. I mean,
the problem is it's besides the point though, because all these people are coming out and striking, making all of these different demands. We're living in this culture where people just, it's like with Extinction Rebellion and so many other protesters, they think that they can come out like kids stomping their feet and making demands and don't have to think about the consequences.
Nobody cares about the barristers' strike.
No, they don't. What's your third one?
It is Nottingham Council. Julie Bindle, the veteran feminist, lesbian activist.
Oh, yes.
An impressive woman, if you ask me.
She is.
She was going to make a speech on Saturday to Aspley Library, and that's in Nottingham.
Oh, yeah.
The hall was booked. She specifically booked a library that was threatened with closure because she wanted to help the local community and remind the council that this was a vital part of that community. And when she arrived, she wasn't allowed in. because Nottingham Council said, and I quote, the reason that Ms Bindle will not be allowed in is because of the Speaker's views on transgender rights. They went on to say, Nottingham is an inclusive city, and as a council, we support our LGBT community and have committed to supporting trans rights as human rights through Stonewall.
Haven't they missed out a couple of sort of letters there? The LGBTQIA plus.
Yeah, all the alphabet followed by plus.
Yeah. In a different order.
So Julie Bindle, to her credit, is now going to sue the council, saying, first of all, you know, she's not against transgender rights. She's a feminist. She has views on the eradication of women, the cancellation of women, but she has no problem with the trans community. So she says Nottingham are defaming me, they're libelling me, and also they have illegally prevented me from exercising my right to free speech and all the people who bought tickets to go. So Nottingham Council, virtue signalling, oh, we're so nice to the LGBT community, have caught a massive cold because they've got Julie Bindle all wrong and they don't seem to understand the basic right to free speech. Absolutely disgusting.
This is a problem with intersectionality, or the idea of intersectionality, though, because they believe that all of these different intersecting identities are compatible with each other fundamentally. But it's clear that they're not. It's clear that, you know, for example, respecting certain interpretations of Islam is not compatible with respecting the rights of same-sex attracted people, or that respecting rights based on gender isn't compatible with respecting rights based on sex. The longer that they keep trying to pursue this idea that all of these things are compatible with each other, it's just going to be complete carnage and war in this way until women sue their rights back.
Yeah, well, that's sort of what I think Julie's trying to do. She went on when the doors were closed to her to hold the meeting in the car park, and of course there are a few trans extremists yelling insults.
I like those guys in Bristol.
Yeah, yelling insults at her. So she went over to talk to them, and she says the trouble is that they thought I was Julie Birchall.
Yeah, there's always that problem.
All women look the same.
Yeah, you know, cancel them.
All women
when
are
you say
potential
women, I
rape-
think you mean
that's not right.
I think you mean people with cervixes.
Do you think we'll ever hear that phrase? All women are potential rapists. I know it used to be all men are potential rapists. Yeah, maybe it'll be all women now.
And what annoys me about this, they never call men, you know, people with testicles or people with prostates, do they?
They have done.
But
I've heard a doctor on BBC calling it people with prostates.
Well, that's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
But most of it goes in the direction of women. People with cervixes.
Most of it does.
People who menstruate, people who get pregnant. I mean, women, that's the word.
People who annoy you.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
People you get married to in the past. People you get married to and then regret.
And then regret. People you get divorced from. I mean, you know, it goes on and on. Anyway, I'm going to, just before I ask for your third, Rishi Sunak is going to be carried over from last week. I can't remember why he was in last time, but he's in this time just for not doing anything. You know, he's running the Treasury, but he doesn't seem to be giving anybody any money back. I know they keep telling us they're giving us money back, but nobody's really getting it. And it's all just going on every single week.
They've got this joint statement coming up.
Well, that's what we keep hearing.
Where it seems that the government have still not discovered that they're Conservative.
No.
because they're not announcing any
tax
cuts.
They're not cutting taxes. They're not giving anybody anything off the fuel tax. They're talking about it, but they just keep talking about it. So anyway, that's his...
Boris Johnson doll. Why don't you cut the taxes? Ukraine. Why don't you stop people striking? Ukraine. That's all he says. Is Ukraine.
Absolutely right. So who's your third?
In the same vein as the pre-Rishi nomination, MCCAIN, the oven chip company that used to be seen as a very family-oriented company. They've just put out an advert that was going around on Twitter this morning for those little potato smileys that children get at school. It's a food that is for children, I imagine.
Okay.
I don't know if you're eating any smileys.
I haven't seen that.
No. But it's an advert where a drag queen creates a very vivacious drag queen, creates a dish out of this smiley that looks like her, and she uses some meat to put, as she puts it, I think the word she uses is massive knockers on this.
That's nice.
Advertising a food that is for children using the word knockers, and then presenting this thing to the camera. What was interesting, going back to what you were saying about women's rights, is that all of the comments that I could see were all women saying, this is woman face, like blackface, and this is offensive to me. This is not femininity. This is something that I find really offensive. Drag queens are something that are inherently sexualized. They're a sexualized performance like burlesque. We've seen all throughout Pride these images of people who are doing sexual things and being sexualized around children at Pride events. And now to have a drag queen, and as if that somehow represents the gay community or but to have a very sexualized drag queen presenting and advertising a children's food, I think there were a lot of people who were very annoyed about it. And I think the reason why McCain are planks is because I think they've really misunderstood their client base.
They're sort of desperately trying to virtue signal, but finding it all very confusing.
Yes, I mean, drag queens are not really suitable children's entertainers, are they?
But it's constant, isn't it? This strange sort of bringing together of drag queens and children. Why? Why drag queens?
Have you seen the
children?
BBC lately? Nearly all the presenters are now drag queens. I mean, it's getting ridiculous. Yeah.
I don't really watch the BBC.
There's just something very disturbing about it, because even you wouldn't have ever thought that behaving in a sexualized way around children is appropriate. But for some reason, some people seem to think that it's okay if it's a drag queen doing it, like they're just some kind of benign clown rather than a kind of burlesque act.
Yeah, I've got no objection to drag queens, but don't put them forward as the sort of very...
They're not really children's entertainers.
They're being put forward as the embodiment of inclusivity. Yeah. Well, they're not really.
And they're desperate to tell you there's nothing wrong with it. It's been completely normal. Well, you know, you can say that if you want.
I don't care, but there are instances where they're not appropriate.
Exactly right.
And an advert for kids, maybe not.
It's for adults. It should just be kept away from children. And I think that there is a good point to be made, which is that drag queens have this kind of... They play on this kind of like caricature of femininity.
Yes.
And for many people, that is very offensive.
Taking the mickey out of women.
And I think the issue is just simply that this isn't something that ever gets discussed. No. It's never recognised. But regardless, it's just not appropriate.
You're not allowed to talk about it. Well, we can talk about it. A BBC presenter who's not a drag queen, Gary Lineker, is my third.
He's not?
He's just a drag.
Well, that might he's just a drag. That might be his next move, though, because again, last week he gave this extraordinary interview on a podcast in which he said that as a young man growing up in Leicester. He had quite dark skin and he used to get racial abuse. And I mean, people were just incredulous. I mean, Gary Lineker comes out with some right rubbish quite often. And previously he'd said that he was pretty much duty-bound to say whatever he wanted on social media, despite the fact that BBC rules say you're not supposed to. And all the things were read to him. He said, no, I've got to give my opinion. It's a big platform and I believe I should be allowed to do it. He then said that not only did he suffer racist abuse as a child, but that he suffered racist abuse as a player, right? Now, he played in several football teams, most of which had black players in them. Yeah. You're not going to tell me that people were giving him racial abuse when he was playing alongside black players who were either getting it or were not getting it. But, you know, it was the most ridiculous thing. And I think an awful lot of members of the footballing community just went, sorry, Gary, you know, I was a black player, I'd got proper racial abuse. You can't go around saying you got racial abuse when you're white, surely.
Do you remember Rachel Dolezal, the woman who pretended that she was black and said that she was transracial, or Ollie London, who believes that he's a South Korean.
Oh, yeah, we had him on the show,
but I'm not suggesting that Gary Lineker has gone quite that far, but there's definitely got to be something to be said for the psychology, that people just really want to participate.
It's a need for victimhood.
It's not just a desire to be an ally or to talk about the problems. They also feel that they have to be a part of it. Like there's something dirty about belonging to the group that is outside of the orthodoxy. And they can maybe it's because it makes them feel that they can speak with more authority if they pretend to be...
I think it's just ticks another box.
It's a need for victimhood. They've got to be a victim. If you're on the left, you've got to somehow prove that you have suffered at the hands of the evil right-wing majority.
Racist.
And that's what it is.
I'd love to know what other ethnic minority footballers are suggesting that.
Well, a lot of people didn't.
Because surely this makes a mockery of their experience.
Well, it does, and that's more or less what many of them said. We've got to wrap it up, though, guys. So let's have each of your nominations. Which is your favourite one? Because we're going to have to do it quickly. So which is your favourite one of your three?
I'm going to probably pick... I think Mark Drakeford and
Mark
the
Drakeford looks
1,700
good.
free quid for kids.
And what about you,
The Glastonbury
Emma?
litterers.
The Glastonbury litterers. I'm going to pick for mine, I think, the strikers, because I think they're the sort of story of the week, really. So we've got the strikers, we've got the Glastonbury idiots, and we've got Mark Drakeford. What do you think?
Well, personally, just because it's so garish and so ludicrous, I'm going to go for Drakeford. I know it's mine. But
It is mad,
I
that.
do think it's so...
I think I prefer the strikers.
I
to
like
that.
the strikers too.
All right.
Yeah.
So we'll give you Drakeford.
Sorry, Kevin.
Can I be second, please?
You can be second. You can be second, and you can, of course, have MCCAIN. Sorry, Glastonbury is third, which I think is pretty good.
That's good.
It's pretty tight.
That's a good list.
Yeah, the Glastonbury. I think you said a bad word there. Idiots. Mark Drakeford, First Minister of Wales, but the winners this week, all the people that are either going on strike, have been on strike, or are going to go on strike. You're all planks, so just stop it. We'll be back next time.